there is a silence that follows you everywhere. Even when your days are full, even when the people around you smile and say you're doing well, even when you perform the rituals of success, study, work, family, responsibility, there is a silence beneath all that. And that silence whispers, "This isn't your life." You don't say it aloud. You don't even think it clearly. But it's there, beneath the tension in your shoulders, beneath your polite nods, beneath the way your laughter feels slightly off-key, like you're playing a role someone else wrote for you. Carl Jung once wrote, "Nothing has a stronger influence psychologically on their environment and especially on their children than the unlived life of the parent." But what happens when the unlived life of your parent becomes the one you try to live? What happens when the dreams you chase are dreams you never chose? What happens when you don't even realize you've betrayed yourself? Because the betrayal was so quiet, so well rewarded, so perfectly disguised as virtue. You were praised for being responsible. You were admired for being good. You were respected for your sacrifices. And with every compliment, you wandered further from your own soul. Because no one told you that you could lose yourself by being everything they wanted. No one warned you that obedience can turn into a coffin lined with golden words like practical and stable, but hollowed out by your own absence. Jung called this the persona, the mask we wear to meet the world's expectations. A social costume, a necessary tool, but also a dangerous trap. The danger is not in wearing the mask. The danger is in forgetting that it's a mask. You see, the persona makes life smoother. It lets you belong. It helps you survive. But it does not help you become whole. And there comes a time, quietly, often in your late 20s, 30s, or even 40s, when something inside begins to ache. Not from stress, not from failure, but from the unbearable weight of living a life that isn't yours. Jung believed that the soul does not go silent forever. It waits, and when the time is right, it sends signals, not dramatic ones. Subtle. You feel exhausted even after rest. You achieve something and feel nothing. You're surrounded by people, yet you feel invisible. You stare at your ceiling at 2 a.m. and think, "I've done everything right. Why does it feel so wrong?" That is not depression. That is not laziness. That is the self knocking on your door asking you to return. Return to what? To the part of you that never got a voice. To the instinct you silenced so you wouldn't disappoint your family. To the curiosity you buried so you could become useful. To the anger you swallowed so you wouldn't be seen as difficult. It is the slow uprising of your unlived life. And it comes with a question you can't ignore. Whose life am I living? If you're brave enough to face that question, you will enter what Jung called the dark night of the soul. Not because you are failing, but because you are awakening. This moment, this unraveling, is not the end of your life. It's the end of a performance. It's the moment when the script falls from your hand, and for the first time you see the stage lights, the audience, and the quiet voice inside you asking, do you want to keep acting, or do you want to be real? But becoming real has a cost, a sacred one. You will lose approval. You will disappoint people. You will confuse those who thought they knew you. You will lose the comfort of certainty. But in exchange, you will gain something extraordinary, yourself. And the truth is, some part of you has always known this. There were moments you glimpsed it, maybe in childhood, maybe in solitude, maybe in rebellion, moments when you felt fully alive, even if no one clapped, even if no one understood, even if it made no sense. Those moments were not accidents. They were invitations, reminders, clues that there's a life beyond the one you were programmed to follow. Jung believed the path to the self is not straight. It is not safe. It does not guarantee success, wealth, or comfort. But it is the only path that leads to wholeness. And wholeness, not perfection, is the true goal of life. But to walk that path, you must stop lying. Not to others, to yourself. You must stop pretending you're fulfilled by things that bore your soul. Stop forcing yourself into roles that shrink your essence. Stop worshiping expectations that punish your aliveness. Because the greatest tragedy is not failure, it's success in the wrong life. That's how many people live. Checked boxes, smiling photos, numb hearts, invisible chains. Not because they're weak, but because they were never taught that loyalty to others should never come at the cost of betrayal to self. So ask yourself now, gently, without judgment, where in my life am I pretending? Who am I performing for? What dream have I given up just to make someone else feel comfortable? Let these questions ache. Let them open doors inside you. Let them remind you that your life is not meant to be a prison decorated with praise. And maybe, just maybe, you're not lost. Maybe you're just done living a story that was never yours. You learned to be small in a world that never knew how to hold your fullness. You learned to be agreeable before you learned to be honest. You learned to offer your silence in exchange for belonging, as if shrinking yourself were the price of love, and you kept going. You learned to anticipate what others needed from you before they ever had to ask. You stayed calm while your insides were shaking. You told yourself, "This is who I am. This is how I survive." But survival is not the same as living. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." And the performance you built, the compliant version of you that others praised, was not a celebration of your soul. It was a camouflage, a way to hide the parts of you that once felt unsafe. What was once a shield became your skin, and you forgot there was ever a difference. You became what the world rewarded: quiet, pleasant, selfless. And in return, the world gave you approval but not intimacy. It gave you admiration but not understanding. It gave you safety but not connection. Because no one can connect with a mask. They can only admire it from a distance. And now you wonder why you feel alone even in a room full of people. Why you feel numb even when life appears full. Why every day feels like a repetition instead of a revelation. The answer is simple, but painful. You've been living in someone else's story. Not because you're weak, but because the world taught you to trade authenticity for acceptance. And you were too young to question the deal. You inherited scripts, spoken or unspoken. Don't be too loud. Don't be too angry. Don't need too much. Don't make anyone uncomfortable. So you adapted. You became a version of yourself that everyone could tolerate. But now that version feels hollow because you were not made to be tolerable. You were made to be true. Jung understood this dilemma. He knew that to become whole, you must first confront the parts of yourself you silenced. The parts that scared others. The parts that didn't fit. The parts that made you feel like too much or not enough. He wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But privilege is not comfort. It's confrontation. It's waking up one day and realizing you no longer recognize the person in the mirror. And the ache that follows, that quiet despair, is not depression. It's the grief of being a stranger to yourself. So how do you come home? First, you stop lying, not to others, but to yourself. You stop saying you're fine when you're not. You stop staying in places that suffocate your spirit. You stop apologizing for needing rest, for saying no, for not being who they expected you to be. You stop performing the character and begin meeting the person. And this won't be easy, because the world around you is still invested in your role. They like the version of you that keeps them comfortable. They don't want the change. They don't want the honesty. They don't want to meet your shadow, but you must. Jung believed the shadow, the hidden, repressed parts of ourselves, is the key to wholeness. It holds not only your shame, but your power, not only your pain, but your passion. You cannot be whole if you keep amputating the parts of you that feel inconvenient. You cannot be free if your love for others continues to cost you yourself. Because love is not sacrifice. Love is not performance. Love is not erasing yourself to make space for someone else's comfort. Love is presence. Love is truth. Love is saying, I am here as I am. I am not less just because you need me to be. But saying that, living that, requires breaking the contract you didn't know you signed. The contract that said, if I'm easy to love, I won't be left. If I never complain, they'll want me around. If I make them happy, maybe they'll make space for me. But no matter how much space you leave for others, they cannot fill your absence. Because respect doesn't come from silence. It comes from embodiment, from being rooted in your own worth. And worth is not proven, it is remembered. So pause, take a breath. Ask yourself, when did I first learn that being myself was too much? Who taught me that pleasing was safer than honesty? What part of me did I bury in exchange for love? These questions are not easy, but they are essential. Because your healing doesn't begin when others validate you. It begins when you stop needing them to. Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Your people-pleasing is not your personality. It is a wound. Your avoidance of conflict is not maturity. It is fear. Your perfectionism is not excellence. It is shame wrapped in gold. And now, you have the opportunity to stop calling it fate, to begin making choices from your essence, not your insecurity. You don't have to become someone else to be loved. You don't have to keep apologizing for existing. You don't have to carry every unspoken rule your childhood handed you. You are allowed to outgrow who you had to be to survive. And yes, some people will leave. Some will resist. Some will say you've changed. Let them, because the truth is, you were never truly seen when you were being who they wanted. And now, you're not here to be palatable. You're here to be real. You're here to speak words that shake the room instead of soften it. You're here to feel fully, to cry without shame, to rage without guilt, to love without apology. You're here to reclaim the parts of you that once felt like liabilities, but were always your greatest truth. And if you're afraid, that's okay. Courage doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you act anyway. You show up to your own life. You stop running. You stop hiding. You stop dimming your light just to keep others comfortable. Because this life, this story, was meant to be yours, not theirs. Not a copy, not a performance, but yours. So ask yourself again, not as a critique, but as an invitation. Where am I still pretending? Where am I still performing? Where am I still hoping to be loved for someone I'm not? And what would happen if just for a moment, you let the real you take the stage? You've spent so long learning how to disappear. You forgot what it feels like to arrive, to show up in a room as yourself, unmasked, unfiltered, undiluted. The journey back to you is not linear. It's not clean. You won't wake up one day, speak your truth, set your boundaries, and suddenly be free. No, you will hesitate. You will question. You will hear the old voices. You're being difficult. You're making a scene. You've changed, and they'll be right. You are changing, because healing is not becoming a new person. It's unbecoming the person you had to be, to survive a life that didn't honor your truth. Carl Jung said, "The shoe that fits one person pinches another." There is no recipe for living that suits all cases, but for most of your life you tried to squeeze into someone else's shoe. Their model, their values, their definition of success. You wore the pain quietly and called it maturity. But the soul doesn't care about appearances. The soul wants to grow, to stretch, to break patterns that have existed for generations. And that kind of growth, it comes at a cost. You will lose comfort. You will lose roles that once earned you praise. You will lose people who only loved the version of you that never said no. But here is what you will gain, what you were never meant to live without. Clarity, direction, boundaries that feel like protection, not walls. Relationships that nourish, not drain. A voice that no longer shakes when you use it. And most of all, a sense of self that doesn't vanish the moment someone else disapproves. But don't expect the world to applaud your awakening. Some will misunderstand your healing as cruelty. Some will try to shame you back into the version of you that made their lives easier. Let them. You are no longer performing to earn your place. You've already earned it by simply existing. You are no longer seeking permission to be whole. Wholeness is not granted by others. It's remembered from within. But wholeness doesn't mean you're done. It means you've begun. Because when you stop betraying yourself, a new path opens, not paved with certainty, but with meaning. You begin to live from the inside out. You begin to ask different questions. Not what do they want from me, but what do I want for myself? Not how do I fit in, but where do I feel most alive? Not will they leave me if I speak up, but am I willing to leave myself if I stay silent? Jung believed that every soul carries within it a map, a symbolic journey toward individuation. And that journey doesn't lead to perfection. It leads to integration. The light, the shadow, the child, the rage, the longing, the boundaries, the voice, all of it held in one being. That being is you, not the you they asked for, not the one you performed, the real one, the one that flinched when others were careless, the one that always knew, the one that's been whispering to you in quiet moments, "This isn't it." And now you know what it meant. The numbness, not failure, just a signal. The anxiety, not weakness, just truth that's been silenced. The exhaustion, not laziness, just the weight of living out of alignment for too long. It's time to let that weight go. You are not obligated to carry the legacy of silence. You are not responsible for protecting other people from your boundaries. You are not here to be digestible. You are here to be free. And freedom begins when you realize you don't have to prove anything anymore. Not your worth, not your goodness, not your value. You've been enough since the beginning. You were just convinced otherwise. So now the question becomes, will you keep living the version of your life that pleases everyone but starves your soul? Or will you have the courage to write a new script? A life where you don't vanish into every room. A life where your voice doesn't come last. A life where your presence is not optional but sacred. That life isn't waiting for you. It's already here, inside the parts you've silenced, inside the no's you never said, inside the truths you were afraid to speak. It's time now, time to reclaim your space, to take back your narrative, to stop asking for permission to exist fully. And yes, there will be discomfort, but you've already survived the discomfort of pretending. Now try the discomfort of becoming, because that is the kind of pain that leads to freedom. Jung wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain," and you are coming into consciousness. So practice this truth, not in theory, but in your next conversation, your next decision, your next moment of doubt. Let your actions answer the question, do I belong to myself yet? Because once you do, everything changes. Your standards rise, your circle shifts, your energy becomes grounded. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop chasing and start choosing. You begin to trust your instincts again. You begin to breathe fully. You begin to feel safe, not because others made it so, but because you stopped abandoning yourself. So now, ask yourself, what would it look like to stop negotiating your worth? What would change if you honored your no as deeply as you've honored your yes? What would your life feel like if you finally made peace with being real, even if it meant losing who you were never meant to be? Let that reflection guide you, not just now, but tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that. Because self-respect is not a moment, it's a practice. It's the quiet promise you keep making to yourself. I will not betray you again. If this video stirred something in you, don't let it stay in your head. Bring it into your body, your voice, your choices. Let this be more than insight. Let it be your turning point. And if any part of this truth resonated, share it in the comments. Not for me, but for you. Sometimes writing it down is the moment your soul feels heard. What did this video awaken in you? What are you walking away from? And what are you finally ready to walk toward? Write it, let it echo, and then when you're ready to keep going, click into the next video. Because this is only the beginning. There is still more to unlearn. Still more of yourself to come home to. Still more healing to be lived. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are simply remembering. So keep going. Keep choosing you. And most of all, keep coming back to your truth.